For our recent assessment, which is assessment 3, looking at the heart rate of Ben Smith. This is just the graph that students were given, and they need to fill in the heart rate based off the table they were given based off the graph that they saw for Ben Smith's heart rate during a game of rugby league. And the allowance we gave was for students to be one heartbeat either side of what we've come up with our answer. So, for example, for the second minute, heart rate of 168. If a student had 169 or 167, then they would be correct, just to allow for that human error part of it. And if all were correct, students would get 2 out of 2, and most students did this one very well, which you'd expect, which was pretty easy. The second part of the assessment was looking at analyse the interchange of energy systems that would be occurring for Ben Smith during the rugby league match at the specified time frames. If we look at analyse here, what does analyse mean? It means identify the components and the relationship between them. So the components we've got to identify is the energy system that's being involved. What's the relationship between them? Being how does it change from one energy system to the next based on percentages, heart rate, the amount of movement occurring, intensity of performance, all those things. That's the relationship between them. We know the time frames that were given here. And this is the answer that Kevin Ryan has put together. First of all, we knew that Ben Smith's max heart rate would be 220 minus his age. We said his age would be 25, which gives 195 beats per minute. He's just gone through and given a little bit of an overview here of the systems and some examples and things that might go with it, which wasn't really needed, but it didn't hurt because it wasn't a written test. So then we get to time frame 1. Now, some things here that students need to be aware of. What I really liked about Kevin's answer here was that he started his answer off with the percentages of his max heart rate. So we know that his max heart rate, as it says up here, is 195 beats per minute. So for Ben Smith, time frame 1, he's operating at 86% of his max heart rate and increases to 95% of his max heart rate. Suppose if there's anything I could ask, maybe you could include the actual heart rate in there itself. But what he does differently to a lot of other students is he shows that there's been an interchange from the lactic acid system to the ATP system. That's what he's put in brackets. So from a marker point of view, automatically I've identified, and I can sit here and go, right, well, I know he's going to talk about the lactic acid system and the ATP system. They're the things that he's shown me from the start. So then he goes through and he's given me his explanation. Now, or his analysis, sorry. Things that students need to be aware of here. Because his heart rate was at about 86 and 86%, that's pretty close to where the peak of his aerobic would be. I was happy for students to tell me that it might have been aerobic progressing to ATP system. Wouldn't be a drama, but again, that would be reliant on the analysis that they've given. So a student couldn't just say that it has to be aerobic because it's 86%. They need to then show how it would be aerobic and explain that for me and analyse it, and then show the progression from the aerobic system to the ATP system, because that's what's happening at 95% of his max heart rate. And that's what Kevin's done here, and he's included some examples, such as a short burst of energy, such as a sprint, making a tackle. I think he's got further written down the bottom here. Okay, so he's got examples in there. He's shown me what they are, the interchange being from one system to the next. And he's done this all the way through. Time frame 2. 95% of max heart rate decreases to 84% of max heart rate. So there's an interchange from the ATP system back to the lactic acid system. The reason why we know that the ATP system, which a number of students failed to put in here, was that if this time frame finishes off at ATP, you would assume and expect that if it's a pretty similar heart rate or percentage heart rate, then he's going to have to start off in the ATP system. A number of students that just launched straight into time frame 2 and said this was lactic acid because of the 84%, or the aerobic because of 84%, then that was where they really didn't show the interchange. And that was the big part. For me, it was the analysis, the interchange from one system, which Kevin has done, ATP system, to the lactic acid system. Again, Kevin's gone through and explained the percentages changed here, the systems that were used. If anything, it would be nice for Kevin to maybe, bold the system and underline it. So straight away, the marker knows he's got the ATP system in there. He's included the reasons why the systems might have fatigued based on the use of carbohydrates, the resynthesis of ATP, the inefficient comparison to the aerobic system, unable to perform at that percentage for that length of time, the recovery procedures. All right. So these are things that Kevin's put in, which has been very good. He's included examples, and possibly we could be doing so we know there's an example in there. That's one way to make it stand out. So that's time frame 2. Time frame 3, again, 84% of max heart rate, which is 195 to 95%. So it interchanges. He's showing the marker straight away that from the lactic acid system to the ATP system. Based on the analysis that Kevin has given, And again, boys might have had this as the aerobic system. That was fine if their analysis was exactly as 84% would allow it to be. Talked about intensities and duration. Happy for it to be lactic acid or aerobic. No problems there based on the analysis that they're given. And as Kevin's gone through here, explained some of the problems associated with using the ATP system, the source of fuel fatigue, the resynthesis of ATP. He's got things in there, such as a tackle, or he's got examples in there, which is what the question asks him to do. We'll continue going our way down through it here. Time frame 4, 95% of max heart rate, 95% of max heart rate. This one here, he's maintained the ATP system. So this is, look, a little bit of a concern for me in this area here. Is we need to think about is that, for a couple of minutes here, he's probably ain't going to be in the ATP system. So there might be a change. But again, just the way in which it's been produced here is fine. I'd like to see Kevin, as I mentioned before, make things stand out, make it bold. He spoke about some explosive movements, which we know relates specifically to the ATP system. Which is what, again, shows his level of understanding, shows his knowledge. After the body has exhausted his small supply of creatine and phosphate stored in the muscles, he would have become fatigued and therefore required the use of the alternative source of energy. As a result, using his system, Ben Smith would have produced heat as a byproduct. So he's gone through, and I know that Kevin understands completely how the systems are operating and how they work. Time frame 5. I'll just push this down a page so we can all see it on the one area. 99% of max heart rate, so he's almost at maximum effort, decreases to 84%. So there's an interchange from the ATP system to the lactic acid system. So Ben Smith's heart rate has decreased from 95 to 84%. As a result, has begun to rely on the lactic acid system. And again, we could start to put in, bold these make a difference to the ATP system. And he's got some words in here. Transition shows relationship between things, so moving from one to the other. So some key words in here which to the marker shows that, he's got understanding, he's showing how they relate to each other, and that's what the question was asked him to do. He's got the problems associated with the system over a period of time at this percentage. He's got examples in there again to support it. And I'm just making them stand out a little bit. Time frame 6, 84% of max heart rate increased to 97% of max heart rate. Interchanges from the lactic acid system to the ATP system. Based off, again, the 84%, boys would have had aerobic system. That's fine again. And maybe Kevin, if he might want to put a few things on the aerobic system in here, because he just seems to have concentrated on the two of them. But the way in which he's gone through and analysed the two systems, how they've changed from one to the other, based on the percentages, that he can't be faulted. So again, just shows a very good analysis of his questioning, looking at the time frames of what's going on, what's happening with the body in these time frames, what's the source of fuel, what are some of the things that might be happening during the game, such as jumping for a ball, what's the efficiency of the system. So all the syllabus points that you'd need to be aware of, Kevin has a very good understanding of. 84%, so the lactic acid system he's kept it at. So he goes through and talks about the lactic acid system, why it can operate for this period of time, how long it can operate for, what's the recovery process, why is it in the lactic acid system, which is, again, Kevin's come up with, and what's the process to remove the lactic acid that's been pooled in the body. The example that he's gone through to give that would relate to what Ben Smith might be doing in this situation, so much as in the defensive line, moving up and back, which is what he's put in there. We come to the last time frame, 84% max heart rate, pushing back up to 99% of max heart rate, interchange from the lactic acid system to the ATP system. So even though we haven't really seen much of the aerobic system or too much of a mention of the aerobic system in here, because of the way in which it's been analysed and explained and put together based on percentages, and he's been consistent throughout, so 84% for one, he said it's the lactic acid. He then can't turn around, which some students have done, and said that 84% now is the aerobic system. You can't do that if you've already said it's for one percentage. So again, we looked here from the lactic acid system, so it has made the transition from one system to the next. And that's what made it, for me, that's what made it so much better and easy to read. In this time frame, it is evident that Ben Smith has made the transition from using the lactic acid system to using the ATP system in order to execute a manoeuvre requiring a quick and short burst of energy, such as breaking through the line of defence. There's an interchange. There's analysis of what's been taking place with the two systems. He's got examples in there, and he's done it very well. So the concerns for me was that, some boys had the ATP system, which we know is 10 to 12 seconds, operating for 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes in some occasions, which, doesn't really show an understanding. Boys didn't set it out well enough. And again, the way that Kevin's done it here, this is really, really nice in terms of easy for the market to know what he's looking at. Possibly could have gone down the next line. He's got the percentages of the max heart rate. He showed us the max heart rate at the start, being 195 beats per minute. So we know what we're working with. So he's gone through and given a very good analysis of the heart rates based on what he's seen in the graph and what he's assuming is happening in the game of rugby league, with some examples to support it. And that's what was the important part. How has it changed from one system to the other system based off the heart rates? And what are some examples from the game or from rugby league that would encounter him using those systems? The recovery processes, what's the causes of fatigue in the system? Is it going to make him slow down or stop? What are the waste products? These are the things that we put into people's answers to show their level of understanding. So that was part B.